Hey everyone, welcome back to Crypto Cash. Thank you so much for joining me here. Hope you're having a fantastic day. We're taking a look here, of course, at Bitcoin, helping you understand best practice and big picture, and just really getting perspective on what happened yesterday and what could happen this weekend. I get a lot of questions right now. Is it going to be a green weekend? I mean, the current speculation is that it should be green this weekend. That's just based on what I've been expecting the market to do up until CPI data. We had a little bit more of an aggressive sell-off yesterday than expected, but thankfully, the way that we have our bear market strategy in place, we're just fine. Okay, so no worries there at all. It's a good job, and congratulations to all my community members for toughing that out, so to speak. And we're going to start seeing some of those profits coming here soon. We've already taken some pretty monster profits on XRP, which is really nice. Take a look here at my signals. Took us 2.5 days to get 125%. That's not a bad return. If you ask me, that's a strong return on investment. So again, good job everyone there. Also to touch on here really quick here, Blessed Acres, man, you're killing it. Keep up the great work, 112%. Philly, of course, jumping back into Bitget. Appreciate that as well with Bitcoin. Nice 33% there. And then of course, look at this, King jumping up with 122% for Bitcoin. So again, a lot of cool stuff. Oh wait, this is one last one and we'll call it there. Jim Lothian, 333%. Isn't that a very attractive number? It's a very sexy number for some reason. Either way, 50x, nice long there from 12.12 I guess to 12.92. So nice ETH trade there, Jim. All right, yeah, and these are all folks that are engaging in my trading competition. So if you're interested in checking that out, there is a prize pool of $10,000 every time we do these events, and probably this seems pretty successful so far in just the first 24 hours. So we're likely going to be able to do this once or twice a month. So this is available to my current community members. You have to have obviously registered with my link in the description below with Bitget to effectively qualify, but generally speaking, fantastic option. Be sure to use that link in the description below because there is an earlier bird bonus as well, an extra $1,000 being given out to my next amount of members that are just starting out. Okay, so again, some things to kind of think about there. All right, so let's just jump right in here, of course, help you understand where we're at with things. So first of all, on the daily, of course, we've got an ugly candlestick from yesterday and today. So let's take a quick look at these things. Look at how beautiful that is. And I'm being sarcastic, obviously. Look at this ugly, ugly. It's just terrible. It's just an obnoxious one. But keep this in mind. It's a hammer up. So oftentimes when you have such a strong, long candle wick with a hammer type body up top, then it's going to continue higher. That's the general consensus. Obviously, we talked about yesterday being overextended going into that. We had 9 red days literally going into CPI data. So yes, it made it red, but we recovered the day with some nice green profits, some short squeezes, of course. And today is also an interesting candle too. Keep this in mind. Candlestick hasn't closed yet, but we are looking at kind of somewhat of a gravestone doji candle. That does imply the price could turn around and come back down, but keep this in mind. It's 8:42 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. We've got a full trading day left for us, right? So the traditional markets are still cranking. Taking a look at traditional markets, unfortunately, they're down by 1.5% because dollar index decided it wants to jump back on track today. So again, some standard stuff, some normal things here. So as long as dollar index is up, we can expect Bitcoin to kind of have some difficulty here. Keep this in mind, this weekend will be a little bit different. So we have some good momentum going into the weekend. If we can close today where we're at, just say 19,400 or higher, I think we have a strong probability of some green this weekend. I wouldn't expect monstrous behavior, but I would also anticipate a lot of folks are trying to get in before it's too late. Because to me, again, anything under 20,000 for Bitcoin or just say 1,300 for Ethereum, those are good prices. All right, and again, it's just kind of that relative strength of the understanding of the market in the last a year or two, and knowing that both these coins have tremendous potential. A lot of other coins do too, don't get me wrong, but generally speaking, I'm adding to my bags at 1,300 and 18,000 range for Bitcoin, almost obsessively. So I would recommend you do something similar because I think we're on the precipice of some pretty good things here, but again, a little too early to tell, right? But generally speaking, we got some slightly conflicting information with the candlesticks from yesterday and today. Looking at the RSI, we're under 50 as well. So until we break back up above, which puts us, again, really close to 19,800, a closure above 19.8 would be solid. That's exactly what we're hoping for. If we look at the MACD, we see this bounce. I was mentioning this previously, where even though we had a lot of momentum to the downside and we had a MACD divergence, it doesn't have it didn't come to full fruition, right? It could totally bounce, as I mentioned, and it did. And the reason why, of course, is because that recovery from the market yesterday. But it's also because we were extremely overexhausted to the downside on all time frames, right? We touched on that. We're at like a 7 on TD sequential on the daily. We're at like a 9+ on the 4 hour, and the 1 hour also had a couple of 9s. So I don't know, you can only push something down for so long before it wants to resurface. And the coins are like that. Anyways, MACD is looking just kind of fair to middle in there, just kind of average. So if we take a look at some of these moving averages, let's see where we're at. We got rejected tentatively by the 50-day SMA. So again, a closure above the 50-day SMA to me would be pretty huge. I would like to see a couple of days above that level. But in truth, right here, 19,800, that's really close to where the 50-day SMA is averaging itself out. We can get at that level, we're going to be just fine. We can also see the 20-day SMA working as tentative resistance. That's a trend setter for the most part. So for the moment right now, I wouldn't say this is disadvantageous, but it's not great that we're stuck underneath that. I think a solid close above 19.4 would be great today. 19,800 or higher would be phenomenal. I don't expect to see that today, but I do think 19.4 should be in the cards to be able to close above that. Anyways, the daily looks kind of fairly conflicting, right? We got good and bad, all kind of averaging itself out. So again, when you're looking at technical analysis, you're really just understanding the general consensus is statistical probability, right? We got pretty much a 50-50 chance on the daily that we're going to go up or down, right? That's kind of where we're at there. But looking at the 4 hour, we can see some type of shift in momentum here. So let's go ahead and see what this looks like. So generally speaking, this is a very strong push up. Obviously, we know that, right? From bottom to top, that was a pretty significant increase, almost upwards of 10%. So 10% in 24 hours is quite a lot in either direction for Bitcoin specifically. So we came up here, it bounced off 19,900, a Fibonacci retracement level, essentially rejected off 19,800, a standard support that's been effective for quite a few weeks here, and essentially rejecting off that level. So the next potential increase or bouncing point would be 19,200, right? Now, I wouldn't say to set your target at 19.2. I'd say just a little bit above so you can get filled, because oftentimes, prices, candlesticks can wick down sometimes, but for the most part, you'll see solid bounces off of key level supports, and putting an entry just above or below is ideal depending on the direction you're heading. That being said, let's take a quick look here. We got TD sequential, came up to a 5, got a reset, so that doesn't tell us too much. We want to take a quick look at the moving averages. We can see we're kind of stuck in between all three. This is mostly positive, not great, but definitely positive in a sense here. Unfortunately, we kind of got rejected by the 200, which makes sense. That the first time you test that, just like the 50-day SMA on the daily, you have a tendency of getting rejected. But as the price continues to average itself out, we can see that we're kind of putting ourselves right in the middle there. So I'd say it's definitely more positive than before. We kept getting rejected by the 20 for a very long time, and that was difficult. Okay, so again, we're looking pretty good there in that sense. We're coming down to potentially bounce off 50 on the RSI as well. So this leads me to believe we might see a bouncing point here very soon, just based on the RSI being typically a strong support level. Again, it doesn't have to work as a support. You can see it got, it broke right through as a resistance previously, so it wasn't that strong. But we retested that level multiple times, right? So again, more often you test something, the more likely it is to break. In this case here, we have our first potential test of 50 on the RSI. That should work as a support. I think our average entry somewhere between 19.2 and 19.4 would be a potentially decent starting point for a long. And the reason why I say that too is just generally speaking, when you have a strong resistance level, you can kind of see that the price was rejected out there at 19.2 for some time. Price comes back up above to break it. It's only natural for it to come back down and test as a support and for it to bounce. It's a very common occurrence. So again, if you kind of look at it this way, the most, the relative recent high, the most recent high minus the one from today, this is basically what's the bottom should be for the next one. In other words, if we're trying to establish higher lows, we need to make sure that this next low doesn't go any lower than 19,200, because this is essentially a point in which a lot of whales, or just traditional indicators, or more so, traditional traders will take targets at those specific points, not just based on Fibonacci, but previous resistance and support levels. So again, if I was a whale, I would pretty much have my entry target right there at 19,200 because of the fact that the price action should come down and bounce. Hopefully I'm describing that correctly. I know that sounded probably fairly circular, but the general consensus is that the most recent high that was a rejection point should establish itself as the most recent low if it were to come back down to retest that level. And we can see it's trying. Okay, so again, not bad, pretty standard stuff. TD sequential, we came up to a 9 and got into some extreme overtime. But again, as I mentioned yesterday, it would make sense that we'd see a bounce based on the fact that our RSI on all time frames was getting overextended and the price action came back up, right? So mostly looking good here in the general sense of the 1 hour, in the aspect of the fact that the price is coming up. It got rejected, of course. It was overextended going into a key level resistance, so it needs a second attempt to retry. Now, granted, it did kind of retry here, you can see. It got rejected, but that's mainly because the market opened terribly today. So again, you got to recognize 3 hours ago, the market opened red, right? So it's just one of those things where the price is going to correct itself in most cases. So that's standard stuff there. If we take a look at TD sequential, Ichimoku Cloud, we can see here that if you have a long position, you may want to consider taking some profits because it's losing its momentum. Okay, keep in mind, still have a decent amount of momentum, of course, based on the conversion line being above the baseline or well above the cloud. We've got 2 out of 3 indicators telling us that you want to keep your long open. So for my community members, keep the long open. We're good to go. We got a nice average entry price, and we'll be able to take our profits likely this weekend. But leading into that, of course, we want to see here is that the lagging span is telling us it's going to intersect with the price action soon, and if it does, that's typically a sign of potentially selling a small amount of your position to ensure you take profit. Again, conservative indicator, that's why I love it, but on the same accord, it's still a little premature at this point. So I'd say that if you were in a long, let it ride, because the likelihood of bounce off of 19.2 or 19.4 is fairly high, just based on what we see here so far. One last thing we can touch on is just the volume weight average price, kind of see where it went outside of the standard deviation lines. And you can kind of see here, of course, that squeeze right at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time when we got our reset. Price action jumped up here a little bit outside that standard deviation, got rejected at the resistance level, and continued over. So generally speaking, we can see right now we're underneath the volume weight average price, which essentially allows us to understand that is the resistance level. So 19,600 is currently the resistance based on volume, expressed in the last 24 hours. So in that sense, we're outside those standard deviation lines, so the likelihood of a bounce here in the relative near future could be higher. We also want to look at the RSI too. We're trending right around 30, and that is definitely a cause for potential turnaround. Okay, so I'm not saying we're going to bounce hard, but I do think that we're entering the lowest point in which we'll see the price for Bitcoin in the relative near future. That's generally what we're seeing here. Okay, so again, even though the daily is disadvantageous generally speaking, or not positive at all, it's kind of just 50-50, fair to middling, whatever term you want to use to describe it, the smaller time frames are giving us better signs here that there's more likelihood of further upside. So to me, I do expect to see some green this weekend, even if we close in a gravestone doji candle. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to turn right itself around, because of the fact that we had such a strong hammer up from yesterday, that momentum should continue. Okay. Again, a lot of little things to think about. I hope that this was informative and it makes sense, and you're doing very well yourself. Thank you so much for joining me here. Hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. And if, again, you're not currently a community member or using Bitget, make sure to use the links in the description below, and we'll go ahead and get on track there and help you out. I look forward to working with you. Have a great rest of your day. We'll see you in the next one.